right, we are going to work with finding the percent of a number. We've worked with fractions, decimals, and percents. So now we're just kind of finishing up the percents. So if I want to find the percent of a number, basically what that is saying is I want to find a part of a number. So if I had 450 and I wanted to find 50% of it, 50%, that just means I want to find what 50% of this number is. So 50% is just a part of the number. Okay, so most likely you will have seen that when we deal with sales. Okay, if you go into a supermarket or something like that, and something is on sale, that means it's discounted. So if you wanted to buy a pair of pants and it's 30% off, that means that if the pair of pants were $40, but they're 30% off, that means you're not going to pay $40 anymore. You're going to pay something less because you get a discount. Okay, so discounts means that you get to take money off of the price. That means you don't pay as much. That's really good. We can also look at percents of numbers as like tips. So when you go to a restaurant, you have to pay a tip. So most of the time they pay a 20% tip. So that means you're paying 20% of the bill is a tip. So that means you're going to add that on to your bill. So tips would be an added on thing. Okay. Then the other thing is taxes. Taxes are coming up. Anytime someone makes money, anytime someone has a job, they have taxes taken out of their paycheck. So it is a percent of the money that you make is given away for taxes. So taxes are taken away from your account. Womp womp. Okay. All right. So that's kind of the way that you would use them in real life. So now let's go ahead and go through your notes. So if I am looking at finding the percent of a number, if I want to find 10% of something, so if I want to find 10%, well, you know that 10% is just a tenth of something. 10% is just a tenth. So if I'm taking a tenth of something, that means I'm going to divide it by 10. Divide by 10. Okay, but now I don't actually want to divide anything since our decimal system is based on the tenths. It's so easy. So that basically means that all you're going to do is move the decimal one place to the left. Okay, so that's what I want you to write down in your notes. To find 10% of a number, you're dividing by 10, but really the easiest part for you to write down is that you're moving that decimal one place to the left. Okay, so make sure to write that down, moving it one place to the left. So let's look at my examples. So if I'm moving it one place to the left, okay, here's my number. Okay, so I don't have a decimal, so I know it's at the end, so I'm going to move it one place right there. So that means that is 26.7. That is 10% of it. Okay, 10%. Move the decimal one place, so it must be at the end here. Move it one place, so that must be 3.4. Move the decimal one place, so that is 27.8. Okay. Now, if your number happened to have a decimal, let's say I wanted 54.8, and I wanted 10% of that, you would move the decimal where it is. So move it one place, so that would become 5.48. Okay. So you always start where the decimal is. It just so happens that these did not have decimals, so it was at the end. Okay. All right. You've got 3 questions. All right. You pause the video and come back when you have found 10% of each of those numbers. Make sure and pause it. All right, check those answers. All right, 10% is pretty easy because all you're doing is moving that decimal. Okay. All right, let's move on to 50%. 50% is pretty easy too. If I'm taking 50% of something, aren't I just taking half of it? Because 50% is half, right? So that means I'm going to divide the number by 2. I'm dividing the number by 2. Okay. All you got to do is divide it by 2. All right, so if you look at this number, so for me, because I'm doing it mentally, I might be breaking these numbers down so it's easier for me to work with in my head. So for me, I might break 84 into 8 and 4 because that's easy for me to work with. So half of 80 would be 40 and half of 4 would be 2. So all together, that would be 42. Okay, you may not need to break it up. You might have been able to do it that way already in your head, which is fine. Okay, this one, 95. This is an odd number. If I have an odd number and I'm dividing by 2, that means I'm going to have a decimal. I'm going to have a decimal for sure. All right, so 95, I might break that into 90 and 5. So half of 90 is 45. Half of 5 is 2.5. Okay, there's my decimal, okay? So that would be 47.5. Okay, you can break this into any numbers that make it easy for you. So you could have done like 80 and 15, because half of 80 is 40, and half of 15 is 7.5, which again comes out to be 47.5. Okay, so 50%, you're just dividing the number by 2. All right, 25%. 25% is a fourth, because a quarter is a fourth of a dollar. Okay, if I have, there are 4 quarters in a dollar, so 25% is a fourth. All right, so you've got 2 different things you could do here. So to find 25%, remember, if I'm taking a fourth of something, you're going to divide by 4. Okay, that's one way. Or, okay, or if I'm dividing by 4, I can divide by 2. Oops, let me write that again first. I can divide by 2 and divide by 2 again. Okay, so if I divide by 2 twice, that's still dividing by 4. Okay, so 25% of 200, I can divide it by 4. So I could come over here and say 200 divided by 4. That would go in 5 times. That would go into 50. Okay, or for me, easier, divide this by 2. So half of 200 would be 100, and half of that again would be 50. So that's how I come up with 50. Okay. All right, next one, divide 88 by 4. So in this case, this one would be easier. Divide by 4, 88. So 8 divided by 4 would be 2. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay, or I can do the divide by 2 again. So if I have 88 divided by 2 would be 44. Take half again, that would be 22. Either way works. Okay, either way works, whichever one is easiest for you. Okay. All right, so here are, make sure you have all of these notes written down. Make sure you have all of them written down, okay? This is the only one we did not talk about, finding 75% of a number, and we're gonna talk about that in your chart down below, okay? All right, so let's look at the chart below. All right, you have this chart. So the first thing I want you to do is we're gonna work on 10% first, because 10% is the easiest one. All right, 10%. So I want you to pause the video, look up above, remember how to find 10%. You're just moving the decimal, all right? So pause the video and come back when you have your answers. All right, check those answers. All right, if you notice, I did not put point zeros on this one and this one or this one. You can, if you want to put 0.0, that's fine, but either way, it's still 6, okay? All right, next we're going to move to 50%, again, because I think it's easy. So to find 50%, you're just dividing by 2, okay? You're just dividing by 2. So you go back to the original number, this number, you're dividing this by 2. So pause the video and come back when you have your answers. All right, check those answers. Those should not have been too hard. The only one, just because this is a bigger number, I had 850. In my mind, I broke that into 800 and then 50. So 800, half of 800 was 400, and half of 50, like half of 50 cents, would be a quarter. So add those together, and that's where I got that 425. Okay? All right, next one, we're going to do 25%. So remember, there's 2 different ways. You can either think of it as taking the original number and dividing it by 4. You can divide by 4. Or the way that I think is a little bit easier is dividing it by 2 and dividing it by 2 again. See, I already found the 50%. So this was already dividing it by 2. So if I divide it by 2 one more time, divide by 2, that's going to give me 25%. So that would be 15. Okay, so I'm going to take the 50% and I'm going to divide by 2, because 50 divided by 2 would give me 25, right? So divide by 2. Okay, divide by 2 gets 21. Okay, divide by 2 would give you 100, and divide by 2. Okay, I'm going to break this apart too. Okay, so I'm going to break that into 400, and then 20, and then 5. So half of 400 would be 200. Half of 20 is 10, and half of 5, remember, that's going to be in the decimal, 2.5. So that would be, that would be 212.5. Okay? All right, the one that we did not talk about is 75%. So if you think about 75%, if I already know 25% and I already know 50%, wouldn't 75% be easy? Because doesn't 25% plus 50%, wouldn't that equal 75%? So if these two together, if I add them together, equal 75%, to figure out the answer, I would just add these together. Okay, so 15 plus 30 would give me 45. All right, so you do those. Pause the video and come back. All right, check out those answers. All right, the other one that you have on your paper is the 20%. And I had that blocked off because we're going to come back to it. So I didn't tell you anything about 20%. But if you look at what we have here, how in the world do you think this 10%, this answer of 10% might help you figure out the answer to 20%? Think about that. So how would I go from 10 to 20? Isn't 10 times 2, doesn't that equal 20? So 10% times 2 would give me 20%. So if I want to go from here to here, all I would do is multiply by 2. That's why finding a 20% tip is pretty easy. You would just figure out what 10% of the tip would be and then double it. Okay, so let's do that. So double this, that would be 12. Double this, that would be 16.8. Double this, that would be 80. And double this, that would be 170. Okay? All right, you don't particularly have this one here, but how do you think I would go now from 10% to 5%? How do I go from 10 to 5? I'm getting smaller this time, so instead of multiplying by 2, I would be dividing by 2. Okay? So take this number and divide by 2. I get 3. Divide by 2, and I get 4.2. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. So if I divide this by 2, I'm going to break it up into 80 and 5. So divide 80, that would be 40. Half of 5 would be 2.5. So 42.5. Do you notice something similar between the 5% and the 50%? Look at that. I'm going to ask you tomorrow what you notice about that. Okay. All right, here's your homework tonight. All right, so on the back of your paper, this is all I want you to concentrate on. I want you to do the 10% and I want you to do the 50%. Okay, I want you to do 10 and 50. That's all I want you to do. 10 and 50. Let's see. Do I? Oh, and there is no 25. Yep, so 10 and 50. That's all I want you to do. Okay. All right, do those. I will look at your completed notes tomorrow. Have a great day.